Welcome to the Religious Treehouse. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Jody.
Jody, how are you doing?
The snow is melting and with it my depression grows, but that's okay. That's
Yeah,
okay. How are
yeah.
you?
You gain one, lose the other, so fair enough.
Yeah.
But I've been doing good. The snow here is also melting, but that's making driving easier.
Mm.
So, I'm good with that. But no, I've been good. I've been in a great mood for some reason, and we're going to be talking about something that'll make me in a worse mood. So cool.
Cool.
Yeah, we're continuing our Terror in the Mind of God series, talking about Buddhist violence this week, which I think is exciting in not a good way, but in a bad way. But yeah, do you have any initial thoughts or brain things happening?
How appropriate do I need to be, honestly?
Hey,
Like, I must say I did enjoy a new tactic of chemical agents um
sure.
in this week's chapter.
Yeah, no, we are talking about a new form of terrorism.
Yeah.
So no, I think we've talked about enough religious examples of religious extremism that we've seen a lot of themes repeat itself so much that like what we're talking about this week is going to be fairly repetitive in the sense that like much of what we're talking about now is things that we've talked about in previous episodes with the exception of their methodologies, perhaps that's the only main difference. um of course there's so many important minutia details and stuff like that, but when we're talking about the broad overarching themes of what's going on here and the reasoning and what's going on, that's going to sound fairly repetitive from what we've talked about previously.
Yeah.
But yeah, um a weapon of mass destruction, chemical warfare, it's new in these conversations, so there's that.
Yeah, it's there. It's happened on trains, man. By the trains. Let's get into the episode. They're gonna just have no details if I start talking.
Yeah. But yeah, as always, we're going to talk through some case studies and then talk more broadly about how religious violence is justified, in this case Buddhism.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about Buddhism, at least for me, I don't know if this is the same for you, but if I think of like the religious group most likely to be exempt from religious violence, I would think of Buddhism
Yeah.
because of like the standard idea of Buddhism focusing on nonviolence, and like they're the peaceful group. And like one person that we'll talk about very quickly, Ashin Vrathu, is like when he talked to Mark Jurgensmeyer of this book, he's like, look at me, like, do I look like I could be a terrorist? Because he's in like his monk robes and stuff like that. And like on the one hand, when we think of a Buddhist monk, we're like, no, that couldn't be a terrorist because peace and love and all that stuff. But on the other hand, all the other extremists that we've looked at so far have, for the most part, been largely normal people that have like existed in their communities and their lives that are quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is really interesting, particularly with our viewpoint of Buddhism being super peaceful.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have those same ideas and your perspective there.
Of Buddhism being peaceful, yes, I'm currently thinking of the Buddhists who are walking for peace in
Yeah.
America and their lovely puppy.
Yeah, no, they just went through my town like a few days
Oh,
ago. So yeah, which is like really cool. Like it's so interesting that like there's that perspective of Buddhism being like highlighted right now in our news media compared to what we're talking about, which goes to the point that I've said in every episode so far. I think this is the first time we've talked about Buddhism, apart from maybe a comment here or there. But this does not represent the vast majority of Buddhists.
no.
Again, as the stereotype is that Buddhists are very peaceful and they, are nonviolent. That is generally true, except for the occasional case that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just need to put that plug in there as what we have so far.
And if you're listening and this is your first time hearing, the worst example of a group is not indicative of the whole group,
Yeah.
may we invite you to listen more because you must, people must hear this. The worst example is not the only example.
Yeah.
But I will say there are a lot of men in these examples.
There
So
are a lot of men. That has been a common theme that we've um I think all of the extremists that we've talked about so far have been men.
I there was a woman
Who?
in the in our last chapter, I think. She later became a government official, I thought.
Yes, okay. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Okay, good. We are, is it feminist of us to include women extremists?
It's human.
Okay. Um yeah, I was gonna no, okay. We need less extremists. We don't need women extremists. So we're
You
good.
could make the funny joke of like women in men's jobs, like women in male focused studies, but it's not funny.
It's no,
Extremism is not funny.
no, this
We're
is
just delirious because the world is burning and we're talking about things that help lead up to that. So
yeah. Cool. So let's be more serious now and let's stop joking about this very serious stuff. Yeah.
get it together, man.
Yeah, yeah, we got this. Okay. So um but I think the idea of like there's no one looks like a terrorist, no one looks like an extremist. This is another great example of the very mundane, regular looking person is, can have these extremist views, which is a bit unnerving, I think. And also I think is why when acts of terror happen, it is so unnerving because it often is a regular run of the mill person.
You need to
Um,
stop using unnerving. It's a pun. It
oh, it
considering
is. I'm so sorry. Jodie, no more jokes. This is serious. Uh, but but yeah, so we're gonna talk about two case studies. First off, let's talk about Ashen Varathu. This one will be a little shorter, but he was known for supporting ethnic hatred, particularly against Muslims. Um, he was very focused on defending the purity of Burmese Buddhist culture against Muslim influences, and the Muslim influences took up about 4% of the population there. Um,
oh, what a threat.
right, right, very big threat. But Rathu argues that Buddhism is about peace, and he claims that he has to protect people from Islamic extremists because they are not promoting peace. So he does this by like promoting fear and hate and burning houses and stuff like that, which
Mm.
isn't very peaceful, isn't very, non-violent.
We shall make hate not happen by hating even harder.
Right, right, right. Which
Cool.
again, a common theme that we've seen throughout all of these episodes. But one thing I found interesting is that he saw intermarriage as being one of the largest fears that he had between the Buddhists and Muslims, because with such a low percentage of the population, they don't, the Muslim population there didn't have much power and authority, obviously. So one of the only minor ways that they have any sort of influence is who they marry, and that causes conversions and stuff like that, which is seen as a threat to, the Buddhist purity that he wants. Um, but yeah, he saw these Muslims as Islamic extremists, no matter who they were. Um, to him, all Muslims had this potentiality to be extremist and violent, and therefore evil and scary, and therefore violence is justified because to him, the Muslim groups were infiltrating the news media and stuff like that, and had their hands all over power hidden behind the veils and stuff like that. And thus, he seems to be under attack. He viewed himself and fellow Buddhists as being under attack. So these acts of violence were justified via defense in his way. Um, and then he was also upset that like Time Magazine is under Muslim control because they were like, because Time Magazine like was like, hey, this guy's a terrorist. So it gets conspiratorial as we'll see later as well.
Yep.
Um, and as we've seen in the past few episodes, that there's this fear of persecution from this outside force, even if the outside force is such a small percentage in their immediate population, that it creates the sense of fear and um, and even if they have power, it feels like they have a lack of voice, and thus they need to do something in order to promote their sense of power and authority and comfort and nationality, purity.
It just feels like some therapy would aid and maybe
Yeah,
stop projecting. I don't know. It 4% of the population doing all that and having all that control. The
right.
math's not mathing.
No, no, it's not.
But I don't think it ever does with this because it feels like it comes from a really just I don't want to just say a dark place, but
Yeah. Well, like
pessimistic.
as we said, like what we're trying to do is follow the logic here.
Yeah.
And the logic here isn't that like there's an opposing force. The logic here is that there is an other. There's a group identified as other, and however large or small that otherness is, they are perceived as being a threat to some form of autonomy. And because that threat is seen, whether small or large, drastic measures are justified to get rid of that threat, which is the problem with all of this.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Just hold hands, sing around a campfire, go to the bathhouse.
Yeah. And
What
talk to a
happened?
therapist.
Yeah. Talk to someone.
Yeah.
It's okay. Get better help.
Right,
It's
right.
just I don't know. It's so redundant. These chapters are so it's the same thing. It's wash, rinse, and repeat.
Mm,
Hate, hurt, repeat.
yeah.
It yeah, it's but no, I didn't expect
And
this from the Buddhist.
yeah, and as we said, I don't know if we've ever actually said this on a podcast, but
Mhm.
like one of our goals for this is that ignorance, not a goal, but like one of our, or at least one of my mantras, is that ignorance and fear leads to bigotry and hate. And when these groups have ignorance and fear, that leads to bigotry and hate. And that's what we see a lot of these times with these extremist groups, obviously to much larger extremes and with much more confusing logic. But it's definitely, I think, evident that ignorance and fear, and in these cases, an inflated sense of superiority often lead to this bigotry and hate.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's superiority because what we believe is the most true and the most correct, and everyone else is wrong. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever heard that anywhere or on a Sunday.
All right, other religions taking strays right now. Okay, so yeah, do you have any other thoughts about Ashin Rathu?
Uh, he maintained his plausible deniability. It's like, it wasn't me. Look at me.
Yeah,
Look
look at
at
me.
me, me.
I just said these things. What?
No, crazy. I just said it. No. Nothing much to say there except hug a stuffed animal.
Yeah, no, that could help. I don't think it could hurt.
No.
But yeah, so let's move on to the next case study with Aum Shinrikyo.
Mm.
Aum Shinrikyo. This is another thing that I haven't said so far. Don't trust my pronunciation on anything. We're trying our best. But this is like a big one. This is like a real like notable event. Have you heard of this one before
No.
we talked? No? Cool. But this is like a really big like historical event that we're like, oh my goodness, this happened. That, we're 30 years removed from it, which like has kind of been like, oh no, not as big deal, but like this is a big deal. But March 20th, 1995, five members of the Aum Shinrikyo movement boarded Tokyo trains and released a nerve gas with the goal not really to kill large numbers, but to like demonstrate the accuracy of their leader's prophecy of the upcoming apocalyptic war. So, just some like background on what happened. We had like five members of the group who were like scientists and engineers who were like greatly devoted to the leader of Aum Shinrikyo, to Shoko Asahara. They carried umbrellas and newspapers, concealing sacks of chemical liquids. And as their trains converged onto Tokyo, each man punctured their sack, leaving behind sarin gas. And then they left their trains, and within minutes, commuters were coughing and choking and vomiting and collapsing and writhing in pain, and all these horrible things. And they were blind for days. 12 people died. I think over like 5,000 people were affected, and many of them had permanent injuries. And this like shocked the public, obviously, because this was like this huge, huge terrorist attack. And then people obviously got angry when they're like, this is a new religious movement causing this. And eventually, Shoko Asahara and his group were arrested and sentenced to death. So, like, not good, big, big, scary event, attacking the public, inciting fear,
Yeah.
and yeah. Any thoughts on what I missed in that
They
brief summary of what happened, so we're all on the same page?
no, nothing really. I mean, a couple of the guys were on opposite sides of the line, but the important part was that it did converge in Tokyo.
Yeah.
I think it was 5,500, so
Mhm.
5,500 people. I There is just something about biological and nerve gas warfare that to me always feels more insidious. It is not more evil or violent
Right.
than any other act of terrorism, but there is an insidiousness to which they added something to the gas. The gas normally is not supposed to be, you're not supposed to smell it, but they
Mhm.
added chemicals to it to make people able to smell it. Um, which I don't know if that was kind of them because some people were able to bail out of the train,
Right.
but they were making a statement like in every other chapter, like there was a specific place that they
Mhm.
wanted impacted
Yeah.
by that. Um,
And by doing something so public, it created like this theater of like this is a performance going on with definite intentions to like, hey, the world needs to see us and our movement. Like this
yeah,
is 100% a way to get publicity, to get eyes on us.
mm,
So, and we've seen that with other groups as well. But there's this theater of war that is happening for sure.
yeah. I don't know. In my brain, I'm like, I think maybe it's a little less violent because there was no but it's
No, I mean,
still
I
violent.
don't think this is a question of more or less violence. It's
Yeah.
just how do you get it's a question of spectacle. Like what's
Mm,
happening here is spectacle just as much as any of the other attacks. Um, maybe less so. Like there's no real like importance on the date that this happened, like other events that we've talked about. Um, but the fact that this was on Tokyo and the train systems was very much intended to be a spectacle to lose faith in the Japanese government to say, can they really protect you? This is at the heart of the city. This is at the heart of you know what is supposed to be considered like standard government take care of things, and then for it to collapse like that, I think is a threat to the comfort of the average citizen there for sure,
yeah.
and it creates a spectacle in that way rather than the spectacle of you know with Brute
Up.
Goldstein rather than the spectacle of just shooting up a whole bunch of people. It creates a spectacle in a completely different way.
Yeah. Mm, I don't like biological warfare.
Yeah.
I have big feelings on
Right.
biological warfare. I
Not a
gotta
fan of
say,
warfare in general, but
yeah,
also biological warfare. Not a fan.
biological. That's
Yeah.
where you lose me.
um. But yeah, so like as the news of this went forth, the members of Aum Shinrikyo didn't know if Shoko Asahara was guilty. I mean, or so they said. Some claimed that like even if he did do it, it wouldn't shake their faith in their master.
No.
So this is, and we've talked about alternative religious movements before. Um, there tends to be a lot of times like focus on a charismatic leader, and that is definitely the case with Shoko Asahara. Many people were like, "Oh my goodness, this is our guy. Like he wouldn't do such a thing, but even if he did, that's okay, I guess." He must have had his reasons. And I really thought it was interesting that Jurgensmeyer interviewed a member that left the group after the attack.
Mm,
Um, And like as they joined, it was something because like as we've talked with alternative religious movements before, and intentionally not using the word cult, like it's appealing to people. Like there's something good that comes from it for the most part until like it goes wrong. And as we've mentioned, it rarely goes really wrong. This is one of those examples of like, hey, this is it going wrong, as opposed to so many other minor alternative religious movements out there that are like generally pretty good and like nothing too bad going on. Um, but there, this kind of offered a critique of traditional Japanese religious practice, being personally transformative and offering prophecies of the future and creating like kind of a central way to see the world that was helpful and useful for some people,
Yeah.
even if it was scary and apocalyptic. And then it didn't hurt that Shoko Asahara was very charismatic and appealing and stuff like that. But after he was initiated, he couldn't return home. He went to a monastery where he meditated and worked in the offices. And when he first heard of the attacks, he thought that Armageddon had come.
Mm.
And one of the biggest teachings of this group was that a great war was coming, Armageddon was coming, which is interesting because, and I think this is a good example that we mentioned last time we talked about this, is that when we talk about a lot of East Asian religions, it's hard to put it in our Western box of religions. They often take from places here and there that kind of help understand their religion.
Yeah.
And kind of like a build your own with like a center basis in like Buddhism. And they're like, but all these other things are also cool, so we'll take them too. So like they were really big. Uh, um, Aum Shinrikyo was really big on this Armageddon, which is a very Christian term, and he took prophecies from Revelation and some Old Testament, some Bible Old Testament visions, and
Mm.
then he's like also Nostradamus, like he had some cool things to say, and
Which I don't
also
disagree with.
right, and also like the Freemasons are going to take over the world, and also like the Buddhists and Hindu are like, and their like ideas of like the fragility of life are all like really important, and therefore the human realm is fated to die, and therefore Armageddon is going to come, and these evil forces are going to attack, and only those who have really good karma are going to survive, or those people protected by Aum Shinrikyo. And then we're going to create a new great transcendent human world. So
Okay.
like we get this mix mash of religious ideas kind of rooted in this Buddhist practice to get this prophecy about a world that's coming to end because of these great evil forces.
Why does a prophecy always have to be the world ending? Okay. Why can't
Oh,
it be that we're all of a sudden going to have lollipop trees? I just,
the prophecies are rarely the world ending, but the prophecies that like gather attention are about the world ending.
fine. But it's
Yeah,
exhausting. Like, do it or don't.
yeah,
Like, and you're not. This limbo,
yeah.
my goodness.
Right. But no, so like there's this like that's like one of the core teachings that we have here. And then like also some other teachings that like were happening. Um there's like the idea of Kundalini, which is like the Hindu idea of
Mm,
elevation through like yoga practices. Um and
I
then
vibe with that.
yeah. And then like Taoist principles and some other Buddhist traditions and stuff like that were also like interspersed.
Those rock.
Shinrikyo comes from words that mean like Om, which like
Mm,
the Om, the sound of the universe,
mm.
and other words that mean like supreme truth and religious teaching. So this is the supreme religious teaching, truth, and like his followers essentially regarded uh anything that he said to be the supreme religious truth.
Okay. The charismatic personalities can do that, man.
Yeah. um but these prophecies of destruction gave a sense of clarity to the followers, and like allowed them to see the world and see the future in this particular way. Um, and then like there's this general distrust of government and conspiracy theories, as we've seen with, the Freemasons and Nostradamus and stuff like that. And so that's why they decided to attack the subway system in Japan, because that is going to heighten the distrust in government. That's going to cause, distrust in these other forces that are like supposed to protect you. But
Yeah.
also there's Aum Shinrikyo, who is unaffected by these attacks, and they're actually going to protect you during these attacks. And so when this guy that was interviewed by Jurgensmeyer was asked like, why do we think that Asahara was responsible for this, and like why would he do it, he gave him three answers. The first being that Asahara wanted control over Japan, and this releasing nerve gas gave him a sense of power. And then after other police investigations and other very sketchy stuff that leadership had done, this would kind of help him go out with a bang. But perhaps the most important thing that makes sense to me is that he wanted to be seen as a savior, and by doing this act it would fulfill his own prophecies, because some of his prophecies was that this World War III, this Armageddon, would start with sarin gas being spread around, and there would be these deadly events. So by kind of initiating this self-fulfilling prophecy, this very, very intentional self-fulfilling prophecy, by doing things like this, it added legitimacy to the group. um, and yeah, and that's the justification behind it.
I told them the house was going to burn down. I then set the kindling on fire and the house burned down. I'm a genius. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a brief introduction to this group, whose name I forgot for some reason. Aum Shinrikyo. A brief introduction to Aum Shinrikyo. Do we have any other thoughts about this before we move on to some discussion on Buddhist violence
These
being
people make
justified?
my tummy hurt.
Yeah, no, I think that's their goal.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're succeeding.
Okay. Cool, 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 cool. What next?
um, but yeah, so like when we think about Asahara's like models, like Jesus and Buddha and people like that, like they're not murderers, they're not violent people. And
No,
when we think of Buddhism, we like the doctrine of nonviolence is like one of the first things, at least I think of. I don't know if it's what other people think of, or uh, but like the idea of nonviolence in Buddhism is like a fairly pervasive idea. And that's
yeah.
not to say that Buddhism has historically been, immune to violence. They've had military conquests and stuff like that, particularly in like Thailand and Sri Lanka. Um, but yeah, so there are cases in Buddhist teachings where like nonviolence can be broken, and like they have to follow like five rules. Um, something living must have been killed. The killer must know it was alive. The killer must have intended to kill it. The actual act of killing took place. Then the person or animal or whatever must have actually died. And the way that this violence can often get worked around is that the killer must have intended to do it.
Mm,
And that's where we can, justify violence. It's not that people are intending to be violent. It's not that people are intending to kill people, but are merely responding to it. So, like a lot of Buddhists, for the most part, are vegetarian, for
yeah.
example. But if there's like an animal that happened to die that wasn't like intentionally killed for eating, or and again, Buddhism is a mosaic, not a monolith. So there's lots of different ways to practice this. But like if there's an animal that wasn't killed but just happened to die, sometimes they'll eat that animal because there's no violence occurring to it. And that's kind of
Yeah.
the similar thing happening here. They're not intending to be violent, they're just responding to it. It's what happens. So that is kind of the justification that can be used sometimes in Buddhism. Uh, in this time of this age of suffering, or dukkha, the violence naturally begets violence. Sometimes this is seen as like the law of karma. Those living by the sword die by the sword. Um, And other times it's just, hey, these people were really violent towards us. How do we respond to that? How do we react? How do we live? And we do that by, responding violently. It's not our intention to be violent. It's not our intention to kill, but it's just a response of something that happens, and that's how it's justified. Um, there are other ways to justify this in Buddhism, like in
Oh,
Tibetan Buddhism, which
good.
is Tibetan Buddhism, I think, is how we often perceive Buddhism, especially like East Asian Buddhism.
Mm.
Uh, but Tibetan Buddhism is a rather small sect of Buddhism. Like it's the Dalai Lama. When you think of Buddhism, Dalai Lama is often one person that comes to mind. Um, and he's a voice for Tibetan Buddhism, which is not a very, very pervasive form of Buddhism at all, but it's portrayed in Western culture as such. But there is this idea in there that consciousness can be traveled from the living to a dead to kind of elevate their spiritual merit, meaning that some people are better off dead, and their deaths would be a mercy killing if they're living a life that would incur negative karmic debt. So, like, if we kill a person as they're living a really bad life and they're getting more and more bad karma, killing them early would be mercy because they wouldn't accrue bad karma anymore.
Okay, but then what does that do to you karmically if you're the one taking them out?
Right. Well, it's mercy in this, and this isn't like all Tibetan Buddhism for sure. This
Yeah.
is a way that some teaching in Tibetan Buddhism are twisted in order to justify this, which is not good. Um, but it's seen as a form of mercy, as a way to help this person by reducing their bad karma.
I guess. I guess if that maths.
Yeah. And then also, if we're in a cosmic war, the rules don't apply because this is war. So, like, if this is Armageddon, then you just got to do what you can, and that's another way to just kind of like step back and be like, okay, who cares the rules that we followed? We can just make our own rules.
Here's my thing with with religious extremism. It just takes a there there's no room for the value of human life.
Yeah. Say more.
It like there's no care. It's very frustrating to me with all this religious extremism that the the value of a human life is lost. Like this is a life, this is an individual. This
Mm-hmm.
is living, breathing experiences, family. And is that not valuable? Like that
Mm-hmm.
individual life, is that not valuable to whatever deity or concept you
Mm-hmm.
follow? Is not each of these lives sacred in whatever
Right.
form they take? And when we get into the mercy killing, I can kind of see the logic there. I'm more talking about all of the religious violence we've
Yeah.
been observing. Like it just diminishes the lives that are lost into being toys.
It's casualties in war like that. A lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, it's seen as a casualty of war, which is just something that happens in war. When there's a spiritual war that's happening, that beyond the physical realm a lot of the times, and casualties happen, that's just something that happens in war. And I think that's an easy way for these people to rationalize this away and not be too concerned about these individual lives. um, which is awful. But I think that's something that even in our non-spiritual wars is something that we tend to do. Like it's people died in order for this just cause because there's always a just cause. We're always fighting for something good. You never fight for something bad. And if you fight for something that you think is the ultimate good and some people have to die for it, then oh well, that's justification for it. And that's why war crimes happen.
And this is why no war should happen, because
Yeah.
it's so dismissive. It's all dismissive. Like if you value life, you don't want any war to happen. I
Right.
feel is what it should boil down to.
Right. And then I think on the surface, yeah, like that would be the ideal situation, but it never ends up that way. In theory, yeah. In practice, a lot of people die.
Well, not when men are in charge. That's for sure. That's for sure. If a woman was in charge, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
And this
But
is
we
why
don't know. We
we,
haven't tried that yet.
yeah. uh, but yeah, no, amen. Maybe we need more women in charge, and that will reduce the number of extremists.
Yeah. And we've always said that. And we've said that. No.
Yeah, I think yeah, with no nothing to back that up, but like that's just the claim we're gonna make.
We're gonna get into it. We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll
prove
see.
us
I'm
wrong. Prove
sorry.
us wrong.
Prove us wrong. You put a woman in charge.
Yeah.
We dare you.
Yeah, I don't know where that went. I don't know where that conversation took us, but
Sorry.
that's Buddhism for us. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not Buddhism, but that's, Buddhist violence. So
Yeah.
that's exciting and stuff to talk about, things to ponder about. This is the last like close-up look that we're looking at a religious group. If there's a religious group that we missed that you want to hear about, like dive into like religious violence, let us know. We'll do some research and talk about it. But I think after this, we're going to continue in the terror in the mind of God and talk about some more overarching theoretical views to look through these things now that we have all of the examples under our belt. And
Oh,
I'm excited for
goody.
those conversations.
My stomach will hurt more.
Yeah.
Fantastic. No, I this one was the most upsetting to me, I think, because
Mm.
I was like, not the Buddhist.
Yeah.
Anyone but the Buddhist.
Yeah.
Damn it. But it shows that all humans are open and available to this kind of capacity for
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah.
No matter what religion, no matter what background, honestly, not even economic class, like it just anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone is vulnerable to this.
And isn't doesn't that just make you feel good inside?
My stomach hurts even more.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now
Oh.
I'm going to go read some files and that'll just blow my brain out.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We appreciate all of your likes and comments and subscriptions. So keep that up. We'd appreciate it. Especially on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Bluesky. I should be on Bluesky more. I always have fun on Bluesky. Reach out to us on Bluesky because I don't know how to use that one yet.
We're not going to be on X or Threads. So if you want to have a conversation, Bluesky is where you can reach us.
Yeah. And email the religioustrios at gmail.com. And we also post our podcast on YouTube and Spotify and Apple and Amazon and a few other places, but those are the important ones. But yeah, reach out to us with thoughts and questions and concerns and critiques. Tell us that we're wrong. I want to know when I'm wrong. But yeah, have a great morning if you listen to this in the morning, or have a great evening if you listen to this at night. Don't listen to us at lunch, like in the afternoon. This isn't a lunch episode. Bye.
Take care of each other. Each of your fellow humans are valuable.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Buckeyes.